Another person I have to mention actually came through our friendship with Reinhard Bonnke. After we met Reinhard, he asked us to help him with what he called his fire conferences. They had the first one in Zimbabwe, and then they brought one to Frankfurt, eventually Birmingham, and then in Portugal. And he asked my wife to help with coordinating for translating, and I helped behind the scenes with whatever needed to be helped. Frankfurt, I helped with the music, and people in our church were involved with children and ushering and all that. But it was in Birmingham that something happened. During the sound check, there was a guy, a minister. His name is Ray Bevan, and he was asked to sing a song during this convention. Now, we were in the Birmingham Convention Center, seats about 14,000 people, and this was the sound check. My wife was going through the convention center, getting everything ready for her work, and she hears this voice. She ran and got me. She said, "You've got to hear this guy sing. This guy has a voice that's going to touch this generation." So we eventually met at Birmingham, and funny enough, then the next few months, we were in South Africa ministering together with Ray McCauley at one of his big conventions, what he called Celebration. And Ray and I, we became good friends. Ray's a great singer, but he's also a great minister. And through our friendship, we started to realize, wait a minute, maybe we need to do some things together musically so we can take the music and use it as an open door to touch people who maybe don't come to church or come to a Christian convention. We wanted to share our faith with others. And that friendship opened up a whole new door for me. I remember Ray called me up one time and said, "John, there's a very famous comedian who's become a Christian. His name is Bobby Ball. And Bobby heard you play when you were speaking at our church and you and I did a song together. He wants you to come and do a tour where I will be on the tour as well." It was called the Bobby Ball Gospel Tour. And what would happen was Bobby and his partner Tommy, they were a comedian act in the 70s and 80s called Cannon and Ball. And everybody in England knows Bobby Ball. He would use his fame so that people would come to the show and there would be singers and there'd be music and Bobby would do his comedy show. But then at one point in the show, he and Ray would stop and they'd start to talk. And as they were talking about why we were really there. And I'd slip over to the piano and I'd just play some simple Christian hymns that we would sing in church quietly in the background. And Bobby began to talk about how his life was changed through the person of Jesus. And then he would pray for the people. It was the most amazing thing. We did a 21-day tour all through the UK. Monday night in Birmingham, we broke the box office record. So many people wanted to come, we had to turn crowds away. But all those that did come to see the show, they didn't only have a great night of entertainment. Their hearts were touched by the gospel. Well, this got me thinking. And at the same time, somebody else heard me when I spoke at Ray Bevan's church. His name was Barry Evans. Barry Evans was, at the time, he was on the executive level of EMI, a record company. And Barry came and contacted me and asked me if I didn't want to consider doing a record, if we wouldn't maybe Ray and Bevan and I come together and do some recording. And I had shared with him what had happened in my life, and he was very anxious to get involved. So he introduced me to another person that became very important to me, Sandy McClellan. Sandy McClellan was a producer, engineer. He had a studio with his partner, Russ Cullum, who had worked with George Martin. And he asked Sandy if he wouldn't produce and engineer this demo that we were going to do. And we had picked the song Long Road to Heaven, which was the story of what happened the night Jesus had come into my room. And so meeting Sandy and going to London, we started to work on this demo. And through Barry Evans, we met another pastor who had also been a professional musician. His name was Dave Marquis. And Dave had played with Eric Clapton. He was a studio musician in the London scene. And Dave was more than happy to join us for these sessions. And we did these sessions, we did these recordings, and it was getting Long Road to Heaven finished was a real special project. Unfortunately, something happened and Barry wasn't doing the project anymore. And I was left standing there. What are we going to do? So I called Sandy McClellan and said, are you interested in finishing what we started? He said, yes, I'm interested. So Dave Marquis, Ray Bevan and I, we went to the studio, River Studio in London, and we did 4 songs together. Out of that, we decided to do a little tour, and I had the opportunity to go to Romania. Now, we had been in Romania many times before the political change when it was still communist Romania, and we were there 24 hours after the revolution, after Ceausescu had been killed, which was the dictator that ruled Ceausescu for decades. And we brought people food, we brought medical supplies, but we also brought the gospel. We had just printed a little book. It's called The New Birth by Kenneth Hagin, and we had brought it in the Romanian language. And I remember standing on the streets of Romania and preaching the gospel just to the people around us, and crowds came around. And we actually have film footage of me then not only preaching, but giving these books out. They stormed us. I had to crawl through the crowd to get out of the crowd because they wanted those books. They knew that something had happened in their nation, and somehow they knew God had helped them to attain freedom after they had been dominated by communism for so long. And so we took this opportunity and we did a tour. We put a band together, and Ray and Dave and myself, we went through Romania, and we touched so many young people. You know, when people would hear we were there, Dave Marquis' background, my background, Ray Bevan's background, radio would open up for us, TV would open up for us. We do interviews. We tell people not just about the music, but we tell them about what changed our lives. It was the person of Jesus Christ. And we were able to touch thousands of young people's lives through that tour through Romania. So here we are, Ray Bevan, Dave Marquis, and myself, 3 pastors, but 3 that have a heart to use our gift with music to touch other people's lives. And I would travel to London, and we were doing these recording sessions, and I was so happy when we finished. I think we did 4 songs together, and they were just demos that we were going to present and see what would come out of it. And I remember going from the Tube to walking towards Heathrow Airport, and suddenly I sensed God speak to me. And what he said to me shocked me. He said, that was good, but that's not really what I told you to do. I want you to do this. Now, I have to say at this point in the story, the whole time in my music career, I hid behind my guitar. I was the lead guitar player of the band, but I never sang. I didn't write really lyrics. I wasn't any kind of a front man. I knew what God was telling me, what he wanted me to do. He wanted me to tell my story. And in all practicality, when you got 3 pastors with the busy schedules we all have, it would have been impossible to really do something constructive on a longer basis. And so this challenge really surprised me. And I thought, where am I going to begin? What other musicians am I going to work with? And then the Lord whispered to my heart, you got right in your church the people you need to work with. And the first person I thought of was my friend Paul, who played bass in our church worship band. So I talked to Paul and I said, hey, Paul, do you know anybody who plays drums? Because we really didn't have a professional drummer. He said, well, my twin brother's a real good drummer. I said, you have a twin brother? He said, yeah. So he introduced me to his brother, Max. It wasn't a matter of weeks before Max was in church, believing in Jesus, playing drums for Jesus. And we had a guitar player in the band in the worship band that I really never noticed how talented he was until this time. His name was Mickey Fogelmeyer. And so the 4 of us put together a band. We called it John Angelina's Amen. And I ended up going back to Sandy McClellan, back to the River Studios, and doing everything again because I knew there was a certain purpose in putting this together. And God used this band to touch many people. We went to Southeast Asia. We performed in India, if you can believe that, to thousands of young people, bringing them the gospel through the music that we were writing and recording. We went to Hungary. We went up to Estonia, into Tallinn, the capital. We did television there. We were, I think, the first Christians to ever speak in public television about the gospel because of my background and because of the music we were playing. We ended up going to Portugal, and we were doing some things on the streets in Portugal. We had drug lords coming over and saying, you better get off the streets right now because too many drug addicts are coming to this faith, and we don't want this. We want to keep them in our grip. And so we saw God beginning to do great things. And we invited a lot of these drug addicts to come to an event that we put on with a group called Teen Challenge that works predominantly with drug and alcohol abuse people. And we saw so many young people come to Christ, get off drugs, get out of alcohol, and have a new life.